What do you say to wind up having to go to prison for in Britain today? Exactly what do you have to say? Well, you're still in the U.S.
Trump and Republicans defunded NPR because they argued it was biased. Trump has removed books discussing racial discrimination at U.S. military academies, including the amazing Maya Angelou's autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings.
So what's the goal? I mean, we've talked about the diminishing prosperity, the freedom is gone. There's diminished enjoyment of life, there's diminished humor.
And this idea that we can crack down on free speech, I would like you, Mr. Price, just to go through a few examples, including the examples of that poor gal who wound up in prison. Don't be afraid to not be able to say what she said, because we're still in America, it's still a free country. What do you say to wind up having to go to prison for in Britain today? Exactly what do you have to say? Well, you're still in the U.S.
Yes, sir. I am going back to the UK, though, and after what happened to my fellow Irishman, Graham Lenihan, I might just be careful. One thing I would say is that the overbroad laws that we've been discussing and the implementation or the enforcement of the law has reached a point where we now have perfectly legitimate speech being caught up in criminal prosecutions. So for a Christian pastor like Dean Moodley in the city of Bristol, it's a perfectly natural thing to answer a question from a member of the public about the differences between Christianity and Islam. And the fact that he was ultimately arrested under the Public Order Act there for stirring up religious hatred, which a charge they later dropped, and not the people who were assaulting him, gives us an idea of how bad things have gotten in the UK. And we were delighted, of course, that Vice President Vance, in his Munich Security Conference speech, drew attention to this other class of cases involving prosecutions for praying silently or for holding a sign offering consensual conversations in the vicinity of abortion clinics.
Okay, when I was looking this up, I didn't know what she said. Apparently, she was critical of a mass murder whose ancestors came from Rwanda. It's now against the law to point that out in Great Britain, apparently.
Yes, that's the case of Lucy Connolly. Lucy Connolly tweeted a tweet where some of us, I think most people would probably disagree with what she said. She disagreed with it herself. She took it down 3.5 hours later. It was, as Mr. Farage said, in a moment of great tension and great personal stress. And for that, she received a 32-month sentence. And she had been released since, but she was prevented from attending this hearing, which I think is a real shame.
Last week in the United States, we had a horrible murder, and I think it was a Catholic school in Minnesota. The murderer happened to be a transgender. Would that be illegal to point out in England?
If you were, you could very readily see that it could be regarded strong criticism.
He was a very bitter, angry person.
Yes.
Could we point out that, maybe that had something to do with transgender? Could people have that opinion in Britain?
If I were advising people, and this is the chilling effect in action, I would say think very carefully before posting criticism of what happened, that tragedy in the school in England, because you could be accused very easily of stirring up hatred against a group of people.
Stirring up hatred? I mean, that's just preposterous. What is hatred? Well, I don't even know what hatred is.
This is an ongoing discussion among lawyers in relation to
is there any, just so you know, in your understanding, Mr. Reed, is there any, doesn't free speech means I can say things that maybe imply I hate somebody? Can I hate somebody? Is that against the law now?
Yes, I hate that I didn't get to reminisce with our good friend, Mr. Farage. But nevertheless, it's interesting that we're sitting here and we're talking about the so-called threats to the First Amendment when the biggest threat to free speech right now is the old guy that is sitting over in the Oval. Now, Mr. Farage and I met over a month ago, and he has made it a brand of being this free speech warrior. And one of the things that I wanted to recap was the fact that he literally tried to shut down my ranking member as he was engaging in his own free speech. It seems like it's more so free speech for me, but not for thee, a lot of times with certain people. And it's sad that he had to run and have lunch with Trump or to go raise some money for his 4-member party. So, Mr. Price, you get to be the lucky one to help me figure out what exactly free speech advocates believe. It's good to see you again. You tell me whether these government actions support free speech or suppress it. Let's call it free speech or federal suppression. Fining or defending or defunding news outlets or companies because they don't share a particular political message.
I think I'm not entirely sure what context you're referring to. I think I'd need a little bit more information.
So, long story short, if they decide that they are going to fine or defund any news outlet simply because it doesn't necessarily go far left or far right, do you think that that is a violation of free speech?
Well, I'm not entirely sure how it would connect with, let's say, the area of expertise that I have. I think you may be referring to the PBS controversy. It's probably not something that I would be able to really...
Not necessarily, but let me go to Professor K. Professor K, did you understand my question? Fining or defunding news outlets or companies because they don't share a particular political message?
Yeah, thank you for the question. At the very core of the First Amendment is a prohibition of viewpoint discrimination.
Okay.
And what you described sounds like viewpoint discrimination.
So it definitely sounds like federal suppression. If you require news outlets and companies to have content moderators to ensure their coverage promotes a political ideology or leaning, would that be federal suppression?
Well, that does sound like an interference with a company's content moderation decision.
Banning materials because of their content.
I think your point is well made. It's worth noting, and it often strikes me, that smartphones with internet access have been available really. The iPhone was launched in 2008, and there were no immediate actions by governments or regulators to try and protect children from content. It's only after the election of Donald Trump and Brexit that there was suddenly an enormous effort at the European level to crack down on content in the name of safety. But I suspect, as I say, that there's an underlying political justification.
So what's the goal? I mean, we've talked about the diminishing prosperity, the freedom is gone, there's diminished enjoyment of life, there's diminished humor, there's zero free-flowing information. What's the goal besides complete political power?
Certainly think the goal, as you allude to, is narrative control. Information is the first and most important, as it were, quantity in a democracy. That's how we make our decisions based on what we hear. And if you can restrict the amount of information that people hear, or you can channel it in one direction, then you influence the democracy. And as I say, there's increasing discontent in Europe about the direction of travel in so many areas. And I do believe the DSA, like the German Network Enforcement Act and other related legislation, is part of a serious effort to control the narrative. And
it's basically a tool of quote, quote, progressivism to silence dissent and to move the agenda forward. Is that correct? That's what I'm gleaning from the conversation today.
It's certainly in a lot of our work, it has gone that way. It seems that Christians are disproportionately targeted. There was a dissenting opinion by the Polish judge in a case called Dotra Rasobacka before the European Court of Human Rights in 2022, where he made the observation that when it comes to speech, those who are critics of Islam seem to be prosecuted and do not have the protections of the right to freedom of expression, whereas Christians, people who are critical of Christianity, are prosecuted and they suddenly are entitled to free speech in that context. So in the UK, we often call this two-tier policing, and I think there's a two-tier approach to human rights. Certainly the Polish judge did, and I agree with him.